Hey, everybody. We have made it to another Sunday at Mike's. How is everybody doing out there? We'll wait a few minutes for people to join in. With the moon shining down on our heads, walking past a temple built by a stream. How are we doing here? All right, we got some people joining in. Good. Good to be here. Good to be here. Appreciate everybody taking the time to show up. Hey, welcome. I hope everybody is healthy and happy and all those things as well. Yeah, it's been a very interesting week. I can say honestly that, oh, by the way, if you're watching this live right now, or if you're watching this in the rerun, I want to say thank you very much, first and foremost, for taking the time to watch. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. I have had the opportunity to get the Zoom pedal that I've been talking about. I said that I was going to get the Zoom 50G, and I got it. It actually showed up, which I'm surprised because every time I order something from Tomon, it's just an ordeal that I have to go through. It just sucks. And fortunately for me, this time it did come through, and it is sitting right here, as you can see, on my pedal board. I've got to tell you that it is a fantastic pedal. I haven't had a chance to review it. If you saw the content, hey, Mickey, welcome. If you saw the content that I put out today, kind of a channel update, hey, welcome. Giving a little bit of information and talking just a little bit about the Zoom pedal here. You would know that I will be doing a review of it coming up here shortly, but I really just wanted to touch lightly upon it in that video. For right now, I can say that it is a fantastic pedal. As a matter of fact, it's really come through in what I needed to do with it. Programming it was not very difficult. I would say it's a relatively, once you get a hang for it, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube where they'll run you right through it, and if you're watching that and you got the pedal right in front of you, you really can't lose. So I did that, and instead of reading the manual, because I understand that's kind of worthless. And yeah, man, I programmed it to have a noise filter on it going into a slight chorus, a very slight chorus, and then that going into a room reverb, and it obviously is very cost effective from that standpoint because that's at least two pedals that I would have to do to pull something like that off, maybe three, and yeah, it absolutely does it and does it very well. With the DSP being what it is on it, you can go up to 6 pedals on this digital pedal board of 6 is the concept there. With the DSP being what it is, I don't know how well it would handle having 6 stacked. Obviously pretty well because people do it. With the 3 that I'm using right now, it just gives it a lot of headroom, digital headroom, so to speak. And it's not working the processor so bad, so it just sounds lovely. And so yeah, it's really, as you can see, I'm really trying to shrink down this pedal board here. I'm really trying to get it to a point where it's just, again, a Fender Twin, in a pedal board. So that's the concept on this, and I'm very happy with the modification. Like I said, this is, if you saw my video, I said this is like version 25 of this pedal board. And if you know anything about trying to put together a pedal board, it is a lifelong labor because something always comes along. We have certainly been inundated lately with a plethora of new gear pedals. We talked about some of those last week with the reissue of the Marshall pedals. This week, the other shoe to drop, so to speak, was Epiphone coming out with their Carina models of the Explorer, and the Flying V. Now, again, looking at the just purely on the spec sheet of that, it looks like an attractive, pretty attractive thing, as you would expect. I particularly am fond of the Flying V. I don't know why. It's not just like a double neck guitar, 6 and 12 string, a double neck. It's something that is on my, that would be pretty cool to have list. I don't know about you guys, but the Flying V is definitely on my, it'd be cool to have, but not very practical. Wouldn't be my everyday go-to guitar, so to speak. But looking at the specs on those, it's quite impressive. And yeah, man, they're dropping the stuff. And again, first it's the Adam Jones, and then it's this and that and the other. I love my 2011 Flying V. Sounds absolutely fantastic. Hey, welcome. Hello. Hello, sir. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, that is quite an interesting prospect that they put out there, at that price point. Again, we talked about this. I've told you for over a year now that you're going to see these increasing price points with these app phones, though they're trying to really put their foot in terms of the details of the limits of what they can do at that price point that they're offering. And it won't be long before you see $15.99 Apple phones. There'll be something that'll come out. That'll be sooner than later, in my opinion, next couple of years. I've been saying that. There's a lot of other YouTubers, smart guys, smarter than me, have been saying it for even longer. And we're all absolutely right. We're seeing it. But we're taking that in consideration for what you're paying. I think that's pretty sweet because it is all Carina. It's two-piece. The Gibson models are two-piece. Carina bodies. Carina, if you guys aren't familiar with that wood, I believe that is a African species of wood that comes from the Congo. And so it's again, it's not long before that will be on the CITES Treaty, that basically banning certain types of wood, labeling certain types of trees to be endangered, and the trading of those woods or possession of them in some cases, especially with guitars, crossing international borders will become illegal. So there may come a time when Carina is illegal, and that has a two-edged sword to it. That means there will be no longer Carina guitars being produced. So if you got one, that's pretty awesome. But B, if it goes on the CITES Treaty, it does become endangered, don't take it on any international trips or you will not have it for long. I remember selling brand new phone Les Paul standards at $199. I worked at local top. Yeah, Mickey, yeah, dig that. I remember, Squires were $199, Epiphones were $199. I really recall those prices myself, and that was the '90s, early '90s, around the '90s. Certainly before '95 when I left for Asia. But yeah, really seriously, a price increase like that does have to show some kind of merit. And I think that with them being Carina bodied and the accoutrements and some of the things that they try to do with it, I think it's a good value if you're in the market for those kind of guitars. I think for that value, for that price, if you've got the $12.99 again to burn, and that was on your to-do list, either one of those would not be serving you wrong. Now, these are not limited edition guitars. They are just like the 59s. They are on the permanent rotation list. Uh, Fortunately, they didn't marketed them as a limited edition at this time, an oxymoron in the case of those 59 Epiphones. But it really shows that they are permanently putting, not just in the signature models, not just the artist models, just not just the so-called limited editions, but in their permanent rotation, they are looking to get into. Again, I said that's a mid-level. They're still mid-level guitars. Anything $500 to it, I say 1,800 or yeah, around 1,800. You're talking about a mid, 1,600, 1,800. You're still talking mid-level guitar. Hi everyone. Hey, welcome, welcome. Everybody is fine. Hopefully, I hope you all are doing fine. Yeah. So, when they get into that 14.99, 15.99 range, they're really going to be uh, trying to dominate that mid-level market. However, I don't have a list this week. I know you guys are like, thank God. I've got a little bit something different here. I did a little calculations, and one of the arguments that's put out there, that's put forth about buying something like that as opposed to just sticking out and buying the Gibson equivalent, which I believe are $6,000 or something. No, I'm sorry, scratch that. That is incorrect. The Gibson equivalents are $9,999. I know that because Norm was doing a kind of advertorial on YouTube. You can check it out now. He just put out within the last 24 hours Norm's guitars, rare guitars, out in Sherman Oaks, California, on these models. He had both because he's a Gibson and an Epiphone dealer with his relationship through Mark Agnesi. He kind of hooked him up. So he had both. He had both the Epiphone versions of those guitars and the custom shop Gibson custom shop versions. And you can look at them and you can obviously eyeballing them through your whatever the quality of your video feed is. Some differences. I mean, obviously there was a certain kind of aura glow to those custom shop models, but they both had they both came with similar cases. Um, they both looked the part. I'm sure if you got into the minute differences of the necks, yeah, and the shoulders and things like that, you'd probably find a little bit. But for a lot of people, that wouldn't be a deal killer. You'd have to be a real cork sniffer. So this conversation is obviously not for you. Well, you could always buy that 10,000. I don't understand why they say 9,909. It's a $10,000 guitar. That figure just cracks me up. I mean, it's like you see on those housing shows where they're like, "Well, what should what are the comps in this area?" Well, let's put it at 7,000, $700,999. What's it say? $800,000 house, dude. Um, when all's said and done, maybe even a little bit more closing fees. But anyway, I digress. Uh, it is a good idea if you're into getting one of those and you just don't care about those differences. Like I said, eyeballing the ones that Norm was showing, either one I'd be happy with. If I had the cash to buy either one, I mean the custom shop one, I'd be happy with it. But I just as a lark, I would also buy the Epiphone as well. I mean, if you got that kind of money, buying the Epiphone is not really gonna make a big difference. Hell, try to make a deal, get a discount by buying both, probably. But and I would rock the custom shop at home under lock and key. I'd have a vault room built just for that guitar. And then the Epiphone, that would be the one that I would gig with or I would show off. And again, to the undiscerning eye, nobody would really know the difference or hear the difference either. Too much, because they're Gibson Bus Burker 2 and 3 versus their Custom Burker. And I've heard Custom Burker, Bus Burkers, boy, that's even harder to say. Custom Burkers, Custom Buckers. And, and, I actually I'm not a huge fan of the 2 and 3, as you know. I've got it set here in the 335, but I prefer them over those customs. I have to be honest. So your ear holds the beer. I guess is what they say in this case. But I looked at the resale value, and you know, a lot of people say, well, if you get that Epiphone, yeah, sure, you're saving some money in terms of just having that style of guitar. But your real kicker, the real bottom end, of course, is going to be your resale value on something that should you decide to resell that. And what would be the difference between the resale value on the Epiphone versus the resale value on the Gibson? So looking at that 1299, I know that if it were to be sold to a dealer, he would pay you roughly around 820, and then he would list it at around 1099. We discussed this before, where you're looking at a basic loss if you bought it new of roughly $479. Now, I looked on Reverb. You can get Les Paul standards. So we'll use the Les Paul standard in this example for around 22 new. They had a couple on the European Custom Shop on Reverb here. They consistently every now and then they'll put, it had some scratches on it. It wasn't pristine, but it was new used, and it had demo stamped on it. And to some people, that's actually kind of a cool thing. But we'll say 22 on that. If I were to try to sell that to a shop, he would post it up at around 1900, and he'd probably offer me around 1760, and that would be approximately around a $440 drop from what you paid for it. So you can see that really, even in percentage wise, even though the Gibson is more, the monetary loss is negligible. It's negligible in this case. This is just this case and is a hypothetical, but it's not that much of a hypothetical. Again, I know that that is the truth as far as the Epiphone is concerned. It's good to buy used or demos. Yeah, I was getting to that. You beat me to it. That's where this one was headed to. As you can see, and again, the Epiphone figures aren't a hypothetical. So this is what I discussed with Edwin at down here at his shop when we were running through prices of certain things. And I just took the math of that and applied it to the Gibson that I found, and that would be what would happen realistically in that scenario. So the monetary loss on the resale value on those really is negligible, even though the value is percentage is higher in the case of the Gibson. But so you could chew on that. Either way, you'd still lose $400 when you went to go resell them. So you have to kind of take that into consideration as well. Now, as was pointed out, the way you can negate that is just like a used car. The minute you buy a new car, and you guys know this, the minute you buy a new car and you drive off the lot, it depreciates. It happens. A used car has already eaten through all the depreciation really that it's going to have on it. So its true value is established. It's the same thing with guitars. If you buy them new at the whatever the retail value, then when you drive off the lot, when you walk out the store, then, in most cases, and as I just showed you, you always hear that thing about, well, you'll get a better resale value on the Gibson. Well, no, you won't. In the average cases, it's negligible. It's negligible. Some people argue with me on that, but and as somebody used to say to me, you can torture the data to confess anything, but in this case, the math is pretty solid. It demonstrates that, and then of course you can get into the testimonies of many people out there who have said the same regarding their Gibsons. And then you always have that guy, well, I bought mine back in 1890. I dug some gold up and I bring it straight to town and say, yeah, I'm going to buy myself a Gibson. And I only paid $2 for it. It's like a great guy. I'm glad you bought your guitars back then, and you feel that they have a certain value to them, and they have increased in value, but again, no, not really. And you look at inflation, cost of living, and all those things. So no, you're not really losing in that. They're luxury items, guys. They're luxury items, and as a result of that, that's kind of where you're at when you're buying either one. So you're really then left with just the proposition in terms of that Flying V or that Explorer versus the Gibson Custom Shop, the Epiphone versions. It really comes down to, do you give a crap about some of the other things? You wouldn't get a better resale value, especially during inflation. Yeah, and I'm not even now. Ooh. That guitar market out there, I tell you, if you're selling right now, yeah, yikes. I have to pay attention to reverb now. It is, and you'd be surprised how many of these dealers here that I run into, what they refer to reverb a lot when they come across a piece of equipment that they're not familiar with, and they recognize the fact of what's going on out there in the market. They're very savvy, but reverb really still is kind of the de facto gauge for price. It's a price indicator, but we are seeing that market starting to collapse in terms of sellers. They're dropping their prices every day. And that leads into my next subject. Speaking of which, and I know I talked about, the title of this was talking about touring, and I'll get into that. How am I doing here? Yeah, I'm doing great. But I will touch upon those stories because somebody asked a few live shows about if I would talk about some of my times in Asia, and I don't tell enough of those stories, so I thought of a few that I don't think I've shared. But getting into inflation and things of those nature, the Guitar Center apparently is in a lot of trouble. You really can only coast on a good reputation for so long before somebody calls you out or begins to show that whatever merit that initial reputation no longer holds true. And in the case of the Guitar Center, that is very apparent. They are in severe trouble. They can't make the interest payments on their loans, and they are $1 billion or in debt. The B word in debt. And they've been downgraded by Moody's. For a company their size, the rating that they currently hold really shows, well, they'll never be downgraded to junk status. I mean, it's too large. There's too many factors there, but it's not a great rating that they hold right now. So it's funny. It seems like every year and a half or 2 years or so, we have the end of the Guitar Center story. It's like, what? What the hell? What the hell is going on with that? And you know, you know how I think. You know, you guys are used to me enough that I always take these weird digressions on things. Like, well, what was the result of that? Because too often, lawmakers and different folks in positions of power try to come up with solutions to things, but I really don't feel that they think through what the repercussions of those things are. You know, in the intelligence community, it's called wargaming it. You just look at it. Well, this is the outcome, and what are the outcomes from this, and how to deal with that. But I think when you saw that growth of the Guitar Center, the way that it was in the 80s, early 80s, when I was growing up, my growth as a musician went hand in hand with the growth of the Guitar Center. I don't, I wouldn't have the experience or a lot of the knowledge that I have if it hadn't been for the Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, up there in Hollywood. That was my place to go. It took me, from my parents' house to there, about 20-minute drive or so, depending upon traffic, and that was where I would go to when I was a teenager. Then when I became, even in college, I would drive over from Cal State Northridge down to Hollywood, and I would go there. I would, I don't think they had one out in Sherman Oaks at that time, but in any case, that was the one that I would go. I'd go up over Laurel Canyon. But grew up with it. But I sometimes really think about some of the mom and pop shops that were around at that time as well. There were a lot of small guitar shops on Sunset Boulevard back in the 80s as well. Some pawn shops, but there were a lot of, and not just there, but in any city. What are your thoughts about our guitar companies now pushing direct selling to customers, cutting out distributors, small mom and pops? Well, that's what I'm getting into. Like I said, you guys know the way I think. So I said, okay, so you created this monster, Godzilla, that tore through town. Yeah, it did some good. Gave out guitars to underprivileged kids. They did some good. At least they didn't roll over their used guitars with trucks, like a Mack truck like Gibson did. They did some good things. I'm not taking that away from them. But there is a degree, it is nonetheless a walking corpse. And they made this, not Godzilla, this walking zombie corpse. It was a fresh, vibrant human being. But by the time it got bought and sold and traded and pimped out so many times, it was wore out. It was a zombie company, which is what it is. And in the course of that, it sucked all the lifeblood out of communities with the mom and pop stores. Now, the monster, it's been, we've heard reports of its death in the news for many years now. It's like, I saw the Loch Ness Monster. I saw Nessie. We hear that every few years. It's like the death of Guitar Center is like seeing, the abominable snowman. Every few years somebody comes up with that story. But here we are again. Maybe it's true this time. I wouldn't hold my breath. But maybe it's true this time that, the life support is finally going to get pulled off. And to be honest with you, with the economic headwinds that we're in right now, this is not, flush full of money hedge fund season. Everybody's tightening up, and we'll see what happens with that. However, in the wake of this, say they do go down and they are gone, who's going to take their place? And then on Hollywood Boulevard, you'll have Sam Ash still, which is still a quality place to go to. I don't know how they've done it, but they have done it. But all those other shops are gone, and if somebody steps in and says, "Hey, I want to take their place. I want to open up a guitar shop," do you know how much Fender and Gibson and Epiphone ask for you to become one of their authorized dealerships? You're looking at 100,000, 150,000, or maybe even up to 250, $500,000 deposit that they'll ask you to put down. And they will tell you not only do you have to put that money down, but you're going to have to sell a certain amount. If you don't sell a certain amount, you don't move a certain amount, we're going to take this away from you. That's what it takes in order to become all those mom and pop stores that before, if they had stuck around, they'd be in a lot better position to maybe they could even grandfather better deals in because they've been doing it for a while. You never know. I doubt it with knowing Gibson and Epiphone and I'm sorry, Fender. You know, but in any case, to start up again, to start all over again, is quite a financial ask on a lot of folks. And so, what's going to take its place? You know, then you're going to be pushed. See, then you're set up. Ah, there it is. Then you're set up to go into this system where you're no longer dealing with brick and mortar. You're in a system now where all your transactions is no more, hey, I'll give you, $50 for that. Or hey, I got this right here, tell you what, I'll swap you this plus $100 for that. See, that's gone. That's gone. They're working that out for the system for a lot of different reasons. And so yeah, you're set up to go into that kind of system where and that doesn't really help because I've talked about guitars. Um, you really have to play guitar in the shop, man, because in the case of, I keep bringing it up, in the case of those 59 models, yeah, they're being mass produced now, but every one of those necks is different because they're hand. That's another thing that people don't talk about with those guitars, that those necks are hand molded. They run it through the guy standing there, you've seen it with the buffer and shaper, and he's working it. And as I said before, on Monday morning, that quality is going to be a lot different than when he's looking at the Fred Flintstone waiting for the whistle to blow. It's going to be different. There are going to be different necks, and so you have to find one with a neck that works for you. And there'll be small differences, but those are some of the noticeable, and that goes with Gibsons as well, or any other, a lot of these guitars that do that kind of work. And it's not CNC machine necks. So that is the result of that. That's where you're headed. That's where you're at. If the guitar said they destroyed the mom and pop stores, then they burnt themselves out, and what did they leave? They just left a smoking hole. If I could put it any other way. But yeah, that's basically it. You just have a smoking hole there. Again, my math might be off. I see 11 of you out there joining in, and I thank each and every one of you, but I only see 6 likes. Hit that like button. Hit that like. Don't forget to hit the like button. Yeah, so it's not great. Either way, some people out there, yay, Guitar Center's dead, but what's going to take its place? The online thing? Because the mom and pop thing, that is not an attractive, deal these days anymore. And a lot of people are not going to want to tackle. I know I wouldn't do it. That is not a business model that really is attractive to me. And so, what are you going to have left there? Where is that going to leave you? So, something to ponder upon. Yeah, I titled this Playing Live is both a thrill and a pain in the ass. As I said, it was requested of me to talk a little bit about I sprinkle these live streams with my tales from Asia. And by the way, I had a conversation. I've spoken about this, touched upon it, but I spoke to my uncle Carlton McWilliams. You can look him up. Was the guitar player for Fats Domino. I spoke to him this afternoon, and he agreed that he'd be willing to sit down and do a video interview. So I'll interview him, and then I'll edit it and put it out. So that will be coming up. He cracked me up because, recently Sophia Loren passed away. I don't know if anybody out there is old enough to know who. Yeah, Mickey, I told him about you, actually, Mickey. I mentioned you to him. I said, yeah, I got this brother, Mickey, who really, really, his family really digs Fats. So let's talk about that. And this story, so this will give you guys a little bit of insight into Uncle Carlton. So Sophia Loren passed away. She was a beautiful Italian woman. She was the kind of the role model for what you consider to be a beautiful Italian woman back in the day. And the day she passed away, he sent me a picture. I can't, I don't have it available here to show you guys, but he sent me a picture of him back in some party back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, black and white photo of him. And he's got his he's got his guitar like this. Sophia Loren is standing next to him. She's got her hand on the neck of the guitar. And I said, Uncle Carlton, I said, that's an odd picture. Her standing next to you and you're holding your guitar and she's holding the neck of it. And I said, yeah, she had to hold the neck. He said, because I had my hand on that fat ass. I'm sorry. I'm just getting you guys used to Uncle Carlton because these are the kind of stories you're in store for. Apparently, it was some party that he was at, and he hobnobbed. My Uncle Carlton. Yeah. My Uncle Carlton, and he's not lying either. I mean, when he tells that story, if he says he had his hand down there, trust me, my Uncle Carlton did it because he got around, as you could well imagine. So you can look forward to Uncle Carlton is the man. Yeah, he is. Uncle Carlton is the man. And I told him too. I said, when I tell my stories on that life, I edit them. I edit myself because I'm like, I really don't want these guys to say, Mike, what the hell were you doing? But a lot of those circumstances when you're on tour, perpetually on tour like that. I was perpetually on tour for a number of years after I stayed. I didn't stop. I started in December of 95, and I think I stopped touring in 90, mid 90, early 97, 90, mid 97 or so. So a couple of years there. I was just, doing, playing piano was my thing at that time. I was a piano player. And because of that and living that kind of lifestyle, that nighttime lifestyle, you found yourself in nighttime kind of situations. It's just, you can literally turn a corner and not expect to see something, and sure enough, there's something going on there around the corner, and that's how it was. I didn't grow up. I grew up in a very what happens on tour stays on tour. Yeah, Mickey, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. My Uncle Carlton is old enough where he doesn't, he's 82 years old, so he's not trying to impress anybody. He's just going to tell it as it is, and I love his honesty. That's the thing I really love about him is that honesty. tell it as it is. Me, myself, I do have that edge. What happens on tour stays on tour. And but I do want to share a little bit of it with you. I don't, I don't want you to paint a picture that was complete debauchery, but I have to be kind of honest with you. It was kind of complete debauchery. Because you have to understand, that initial time period, I was playing piano in a lot of hostess clubs. A hostess club, as I said before, these are clubs where Japanese men go to pay a lot of money to sit around with younger, pretty girls. A lot of them highly intelligent, a lot of them really stupid, but schemy. That's a different thing. Uh, and and a lot of the shenanigans that go on. Now, you have to imagine this is back in the '90s. That was a completely different time. It was no cell phones. The internet was barely really a thing. So you didn't have people really worried about somebody pulling out a cell phone and filming you and take your picture. That didn't exist. In order to do that, you just had to break out a big ass camera. At the very least, it'd be a little bit obvious. And so people were a little bit more wilder. You know, pagers, yeah, pagers. Hell, a cell phone back then. I remember I was working for this one guy who had a private studio. He was asking me to build it. And he just insisted that I always stay in touch with him. So he got me one of those Motorola brick phones. One of those big things like that, that gave Johnny Cochran, the famous lawyer, OJ lawyer, brain cancer, and he died because he had that thing against his head all the time. Fact, by the way. He got me one of those, and that was the most ridiculous thing. That was an early cell phone. That was my first experience with one of those things. And I lugged it around as long as I had that gig, and I gave it back to him. I didn't miss it. It was ridiculous. It's kind of cool though. When you're driving down the road, or you pull it out and you got your date with you. That used to be cool. Like, oh my God, you have a cell phone. Stevie Wonder could see that from 10 miles away. That thing was so big. But you didn't have that. So a lot of people, they had a lot more inhibitions. Doubly so, even more so, of course, than my Uncle Carl's time. And I guess this would be the part of the title of tonight's discussion about touring, my opinions of it after all this time. Actually, it wasn't that much long ago, but I guess that would be the part of this that would be the joy, the thrill. There was a lot of thrills. You live for thrills, it was thrilling, and not only that, but when you tore it up, when you had a good show, it felt good. Somebody came up to you afterwards and said, "Hey, man, I really like what you played tonight. I really enjoyed that." And the other thrill of it was being and playing with other live, real musicians, guys from all over. You didn't know them. That was the thing. When I had to do fill-in work, when they said I played in a small club, I played small clubs. Touring and live shows back in the day were off the hook. Yeah, I mean. The hook, there was no hook in the beginning. They were fishing with dynamite. We blew the roof off that sucker, as the old song goes. It's true though, and I'm so glad that I got to experience it, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm glad I got to. On so many other things. My studio time in LA. That period of time too, all that stuff that happened to that, I'm really glad that I got to say it because it'll never return. Sure, I'm sure there's some version of it right now, but it's not like that. That was something else. But yeah, the thrilling part of it was playing with other musicians, the guys you never knew, and just having they threw you together. When I played in the small clubs, it was just me and a singer, me, a piano, and a singer. And I had to fill in at the larger venues that the tour group manager had, I had to play with a band and cover tunes like Michael Jackson or mostly R&B stuff. whatever the latest was, and a lot of oldies as well. And when we had the impersonation shows, where at the big venue in Nagoya, where we had the Elvis impersonator and the Marilyn, his wife, which was a Marilyn impersonator, dig that. And the Michael Jackson impersonator, I had to learn how to play Diamonds, our girl's best friend. I had to, during rehearsal, they gave me tapes. I had to sit there and work that out. And the Elvis tracks, that was my first time to actually get a chance to play guitar on stage. So a lot of thrills, a lot of musical challenges, tough, but a lot of fun. The pain in the ass part about it uh, was also one of the things that made it thrilling. One of the first things is the other musicians, because I learned very quickly about myself that I have the ability to play most of the instruments myself. It's just one of the fact of how where I grew up and the situation I was in, that I was able to have the ability to do that. So I always was kind of self-contained. Jock Richmond, my Grammy-nominated friend, I've mentioned from time to time, he and I did work together, but more or less it was always a one-man show of myself. And when I had to work with these other guys, um, I loved them as musicians. As human beings, they were quite trying because they they were wild. I, you know, a lot of them were older than me by at least a minimum of 5 to 10 years. In the case of this one guy, Rory, who had that guy had to be in around the age that I am right now, mid 50s, and he acted like a teenager. He was the worst one of all of them. He was the MC for the band for the big stage in Nagoya. I told you guys we were sitting there playing cards. We were in between sets. We would play pinochle or something in the back, or eat. I didn't eat there. I ate at the club one night and I got food poisoning, the worst I ever had up to that point in my life. I prayed to the porcelain god all night, and my poor girlfriend, girl that evening, took me to her apartment, thinking he was gonna get romantic, and boy, that whatever that is hit me, and I really did a number on her bathroom. Oh, that story is so embarrassing, but it's true. This girl picked me up and took me to her place, and I got food poisoning, man. It's coming out in both ends. I'm just gonna tell you guys that really happened. But so after that, I learned do not eat the food at the club. But we were sitting there playing cards, eating takeout probably, and we hear that old sound and moaning coming from the next room, which was a storage room. And that was Rory back there banging one of the cocktail waitresses. She couldn't have been more than 18, 19 years old. We're sitting there playing cards, like everybody's like, you got one of these. We're just trying to ignore it, and she is going full on Japanese AV moaning, like loud. Okay, I'm, I'm just, I'm sitting there playing cards, like shaking my head, like, oh my god, these guys, man, they have. It's like that movie Wolf of Wall Street. I just recently watched that. Hey, touring, I had its moments. Yeah, it's like that movie Wolf of Wall Street. I watched it recently, where those guys were just nuts. They were just tearing into everything they could, and these guys were too. They were constantly fighting over hostesses. I think I touched upon this. It's a weird dichotomy there. I don't know how it is now, but back then in that time, You had hostess clubs and you had host clubs, and the hostesses would work until 2 a.m. and the host clubs would open at 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. and the hostesses would go over and spend the money that they made hostessing at the host club. Go figure that. And then some of the hostesses, not all of them would do this, but some of them would, of course, want to try to get with the band. I stayed away from them because I got a taste of, what that was all about. There was this one girl one night at the club I was playing piano for, Baby Grand, and my singer, Naemisha Wilson, she comes running over to me. Michael, I was back in the cloakroom waiting in between sets, again, playing cards or reading or doing something just to pass the time. She goes, "Oh, Michael, come quick." So I come out, and one of the girls has her face in the toilet. I'm like, "Why are you guys just letting her drown in the toilet?" And I pulled her by her back up her dress and kind of smacked her up, and she was just stone cold drunk. Nah, those girls, nah, nah. I stayed away from that. But these musician guys, these cats from Chicago and from New York and from back east, these guys, these brothers, they fought over them, because these hostess girls would spend not their money on the host, but they would spend it on the musicians. They buy them suits, buy them rings, you guys get the idea. And I myself, I didn't want any of that. I've told you before, I had no interest in that, but it was quite an interesting thing to observe. And it's just but dealing with those guys. That was the pain in the ass part, because these guys were, they would fight. Some nights they drink, and okay, we got it. We're on at 5, and I just saw you finish that fifth of whiskey. Are you gonna be able to do this? And that's how every set, everybody'd start off sober, and by that last set, they were tore up because all they were doing was drinking in between, running up a bar tab, by the way, against their salaries, which is another thing I never did. Like, why the hell am I going to do that? And by the end of the set, the bass player's getting a little sway. he's feeling good. He's feeling it now. Like, okay, let's hold it together, boys. And so I just hated that. I just didn't like to deal with the psychology of that. There was this one guy I was up on stage with the Michael Jackson impersonator playing Rock With You, and I was playing the parts. I actually had, the first time in my life, I had to play this part on this key. I had in Sonic, one of those Alesis and Sonic keyboards that I had sampled that particular Moog sound that is in that song, and I was playing the chords over here, and this guy jumps up on stage and starts, moving around. He was a keyboard player from another band, and for some reason he acted like a 2-year-old child. He just starts mimicking me. I stopped playing. I walked off the stage and I sat down next to the manager, and I said to him, "I'm not doing this." I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I don't play a clown show." And I remember his look. He looked at that guy like sure death. And this guy, the guy who handled us, he was not the guy that you really wanted to mess with. I saw that night that icy look that you see in some guys, that you do not mess with this guy. And I never heard from that guy again, by the way. So I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he ended up behind a dumpster at a ramen shop. I don't know. But I hated dealing with those other musicians. So that was the pain in the ass part of that aspect of it. I just found that I'm better suited working in a studio. So I miss it when the band is in pocket. I miss it when everybody is vibing and everything is pocket, and I'm playing uh, in that zone as well, and I'm feeling it, and that kind of thing is very difficult to. You want to recreate that in a way on an album as well. If you're self-producing an album, and if you're playing all the instruments, then you literally are in the role actually as an actor too. You have to take on a different role for each instrument, so it just doesn't sound like one guy playing all the instruments. You don't want to be that guy on the boardwalk blowing the tuba and stomping the kick drum at the same time. Because I don't care how much he works it. It's just some guy stamping his foot and playing the tuba on the boardwalk. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, you really want to walk away. Yeah, I've had nights like that too. But in a studio environment, you want to recreate what a band would be doing. So you really have to. Okay, the bass player. Okay, my bass player. He would play like this. So or slide plays like this or whatever. And the guitar would be like this and he would play like this. Prince would play like you got to put a different role on the instruments. But as is, and that's one of the tricks of it. That's the truth of it. So it doesn't sound like it's just one guy playing, all the instruments. Different personalities. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, you want to walk away. Yeah, yeah. I walked. I got off the stage. I was like, "F this. I'm not doing this." When it's bad, uh, yeah, there were some nights. I remember I got a request to sing some song all the song called "Always" by an old R&B group called Midnight Star, and I got the request to play and sing that, and that song is not in my key. And I started playing it and then singing it. And I remember the bar owner, it was a small bar because the singer was sick, so I had to cover. I had to play and sing. And I was doing okay. I was feeling pretty good up to that point. Well, when that song came up, the owner of the club threw the towel down and just walked over and said, "Stop," you know. And I didn't think it was that bad, but apparently it was. So it hasn't been all great shows either. There've been some times when well, that was actually the only one that I could think of, and I think that really it wasn't so much that I was singing it was so bad. I just think that it wasn't what he wanted. He had paid for a duet, and that's not what he was getting, and he was just getting more pissed about it, I think, as the night went on. And that was the last straw for him, because that happens sometimes. I never missed a gig. I never got sick. The show must go on. I was raised in Los Angeles in the studio system where the show must go on. That's always been my adage. So I was always the guy that they relied on to fill in. Sometimes it worked. Most times it worked. Sometimes, yeah. But I don't. Do I miss it overall? No, no, I don't. I don't miss it so much because if I was the type of person where I could do it every now and then, like every 3 months or so, or even twice a year, I do a show. I would be open to that. I'd be open to something like that. But to go back to that, 7 day. So I told you you work 12 days, and then you got 2 days off. Then you work 12 days and you get 2 days off, and that's how it was. Now you have the whole daytime free, so you can do whatever you want to during the daytime. You have the luxury of that, and believe me, that's where most of my shenanigans took place. But the nights were theirs. I've never missed a gig, but did snow a gig once. But yeah. Uh, they made the mistake of giving me the keys to the van one night because our Japanese driver couldn't show up because he got work. We think we got worked. That guy Remember, he was responsible for picking everybody up from all these different clubs, some in Yokohama, some in Tokyo. And if you guys aren't familiar, that's quite a drive. That's not a small drive. Picking everybody up, and he burnt out. He got an ulcer, and he was in the hospital. They made the mistake of giving me the keys because I had an international driver's license. They said, "Okay, Mike, we're gonna give you the keys. You drive you and everybody to this and such club. Go do your gig, and then when you're done, pick everybody up and bring them home." This is Mike, 27, 28 years old, driving, in Japan for the first time. And actually responsible for picking folks up. And one night it was snowing pretty good. And and for some reason, because of another guy, the guy who had weed sent, his girlfriend sent him weed, and the cops came to the musician's housing, to his apartment, and rousted those guys, took them down and questioned them. Again, these guys, I'm not, I'm not with that. They can do it. I'm not saying that there's anything. Hey, you can do what you want. So, but I'm gonna be here when you're done. Do what you want to do. I'll still be here waiting for you, buddy. I still got you in that way, but I'm not going with you. It's that kind of thing with me and these guys, man. And it was snowing, and we were late because of him, and so I was rushing, and I did something. I still don't know what. I hear this clang because I kind of skid a little bit. I caught a little patch of ice. I skid a little bit, and I hear this clang sound, and then one of the singers looks back at the back behind on the road. He said, "Dude, man, your bumper's back there." I had it somehow. I guess I hit the guardrails just the right angle where it is popped the bumper of this van. He's looking back like that. You left the part of the car back there, and everybody got real quiet after that. Like, holy shit, are we gonna die? Because June, he never did this. I don't remember losing a part of the car. So that was the first and last time they trusted me with the keys. Oh boy, but it did happen. No, actually, that's not true because it was icy and Toronto didn't give a shit. So I did that for a little while. But yeah, life on the road. I don't miss it. No. It was a young man's game in a lot of regards, too. Like I said, at my age, I look at the Rolling Stones and they obviously don't need the money. So they must be doing it because they obviously, they've got something on their mind. But at my age right now, touring and living that kind of lifestyle, no way, no way. And it just surprised me that I knew guys who were playing at that time who were my age, and I just don't know how they did it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. No way. So there's that. All right, I think we had enough of a chat tonight. We covered everything. I think I fear the longer I go to this, the more of a hole I'll dig myself into. I have some stories I would love to tell you guys, man, but my folks are watching this too. My kid's sister, she watches this. And but as was pointed out by Mickey, what happens on the road stays on the road, and so I won't be getting into my stories too deeply. The ones I can tell, I will. And Uncle Carlton is not going to have that same kind of editing function, so you can look forward to that. I got some corkers as well from Usadori. Mickey, yeah, Mickey, you and I, we're gonna do seriously. If you do make it over here, I know you were trying to get over here you had mentioned around this time, but eventually, either I make it there or here. I would love to hear it, and I'll tell you some of mine too. I won't give you the watered down versions of them because it was wild, guys. It was wild. I think that you think you know what wild is, but you have no idea. It was wild, and I come from LA. Okay, I come from Los Angeles. If you don't think that I don't know from the time of high school, if you don't think that I know what wild is, believe me, you're incorrect, sir. But when I got to Japan, they had a whole different level of freak on. Whole another level. And in other parts of Asia too, Korea and Taiwan, a whole different level, man. Woo, buddy. And it was an interesting time. Bob, boy, I can tell stories too when I was touring around the West Coast in the 80s, most of the Mexican for those days. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the lifestyle. It's just, it's very rarely, you have your PG-13 moments. Like I said, when you're on stage and everybody is vibing, the audience is into it, and they're yelling, and you're just hitting it on all six cylinders. Those are the PG. It's just like I said, it's the boredom time, it's the downtime in between. Boredom is the devil's playground, and it's very true. And one of the reasons that I escaped a lot of the traps and I count them on my hand, the number of traps that a lot of those other guys I was talking to about earlier, is that first of all, I had the mindset to look out for those traps just inherently, I guess. So I guess just growing up in LA, like I said, I wasn't a sucker. Second thing is that really in my downtime I was working. If hey, well, how can I make some extra money? I'm not over here, to play. I'm over here to make money. So I had an MPC 60, I had an Akai keyboard and a sequencer, and I was sequencing the latest song. Well, give me the latest whatever hit song is right now. I'll sequence that out so that when they just had a situation where it was just a singer, they could play these tracks as backing tracks, and they would pay me $50, a sequence. They had to be good and in the original key. But that's what I was doing in my downtime. I was making extra money. I was always looking for different ways. That's why I took the driving because he paid an extra, $100 or something like that a night if I did that extra work. So I did that, but the other guys, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be musicians. They wanted to be as musicians do. And I don't fault that, but I took a different route. And if you're young and you're out there, I suggest you have your fun, but in your free time, the downside is where the devil's playground occurs. So limit your free time. Really strictly keep that, and you'll do all right. Like I said, you're still gonna walk around the corner and run into some mess. God, I wish I could tell you guys this one story about this party that this hostess club had. Oh, it's the wildest thing I ever seen. I, I want to tell you some of the things, because they're just perverted. But my God, man, that one sticks out in my head. Mickey, I'll tell you that one when we hook up. All right, guys, you have yourselves a good week. Keep yourselves in good health. Keep yourselves together. I hope you health and prosperity for this week. And hopefully, God willing, we will meet here again next Sunday evening for another one of these live streams. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to join in and listen in and hear my ramblings. Look forward to, please, if you haven't looked at my regular content show where I put out talking about a little bit about this Zoom multi-stomp pedal here and some of the things that I'm going to be doing coming up with the channel. Yeah, dig that, take a look at that, and hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscription button. And until next week, I will catch you guys. And thank you guys so much for taking the time again to show up. Really, I really thank you so much for taking the time. You guys take care. Bye-bye.